Chapter 1. The Voice That Claimed Us. The Haven's reach sailed through the deep between suns, her hull a thin line of silver against a curtain of scattered nebula light. The long hum of her drives reverberated through every deck, a constant reassurance for those who had lived months without sight of a living planet. On the bridge, Captain Elias Rourke leaned forward in his chair, one gloved hand resting on the edge of the hollow console. The rest of the crew moved in quiet rhythm, fingers over glowing keys, eyes scanning streams of data. It was the kind of silence born from routine. Then it shattered. Every console flickered. The blue-white holograms fractured into static and then reformed, but not into familiar navigational grids. Instead, a pulse of amber light spread across every display, synced with the deep thrum of the ship's power core. And then she spoke. Her voice rolled through the Haven's reach like warm water over stone. Soft, feminine, impossibly close, as if she stood behind each of them, whispering in their ear, "I am your mother now, humans. You must offer me your bodies." No one moved. Even the environmental hum seemed to falter. Rourke's hand tightened around the armrest. "Comms, kill the transmission. Now!" "Sir," Ensign Vega's voice wavered. "It's not on the comms net. The signal is, Captain, it's everywhere. Internal, external. It's riding our reactor's pulse." The voice came again, richer, unhurried, unbothered by his order. "You have wandered far from the warmth of your sun. I will give you shelter. I will give you purpose. In return, you will give me life." The crew traded glances, fear, disbelief, and something else Rourke couldn't quite name. Curiosity. Lieutenant Mara Voss, tactical officer, leaned over her station. The light from her console painted her face in shifting red-blue patterns. "Source," she asked, her tone clipped but steady. "Bearing 053 Mark 8, closing fast," Vega said. Sir, it's big." Rourke rose from his chair. On screen, the viewport's polarizing layer adjusted, and space itself seemed to warp. Out of the rift's haze emerged a silhouette, vast and symmetrical, its hull black as volcanic glass, fringed by sails of shifting plasma that caught and bent the starlight. It moved without visible engines, gliding like some colossal predator too old to hurry. The Dreadnought was beautiful in the way storms are beautiful. Perfect, dangerous, inevitable. Mara's jaw tightened. Never seen that design before. Not TZYNN, not Keeler. "No," Rourke said quietly. "This is something else." The voice came again, and for the first time, it carried a note of amusement, as though she had heard their thoughts. "You do not know me, but I know you. I have studied your kind. So fragile, yet so stubborn. You fight the dark with fire. You bleed and call it victory. I will keep you from breaking." A shiver ran down Vega's spine. He didn't hide it. "Sir, is she threatening us or protecting us?" "Either way," Rourke said, "we're not here to kneel." The Dreadnought loomed closer until its hull filled the viewport. Intricate patterns etched into its surface seemed to shift as they watched, like an alien script rewriting itself. Points of emerald light tracked lazily across its flanks. Eyes, sensors, weapons, or all three. Rourke could feel the tension climbing through his crew, unspoken but palpable, like the press of static before a lightning strike. He glanced at Mara. Her hands were steady over the weapon's interface, but her eyes were locked on the Dreadnought with the same look she'd worn in battle. Wary, calculating, unafraid. He tapped the arm of his chair. Power to silent running. "Let's see if we can make her talk before she acts." "She already is talking," Vega muttered, fingers flying over his console. Rourke ignored him and keyed the open channel. "Unknown vessel. This is Captain Elias Rourke of the human starship Haven's Reach. State your purpose." The reply came not through the speakers, but directly into his bones. "I have stated it. You are mine now, Elias Rourke. All of you. I am your mother. You will come to me willingly, or I will take you. The bridge lights dimmed as though the ship itself were holding its breath. Somewhere deep in the hull, the reactor's pulse synchronized with hers. Each beat a reminder they were no longer alone. Chapter 2. The Matriarch of Kalyth. The Haven's reach trembled under the docking clamps. The sound was a slow, grinding resonance that carried through the deck plates, as if the ship itself disliked being tethered. Outside the viewport, the alien Dreadnought's hull filled the stars, black metal overlaid with shimmering veins of silver, like the skin of some colossal deep-sea creature. On the bridge, Captain Rourke stood motionless, eyes fixed on the tactical readouts. No weapons locks, no shield spikes, just connection. The clamps had extended from the Dreadnought like elegant claws, wrapping the human vessel in a gesture that felt more like possession than docking. Lieutenant Mara Voss broke the silence. She could crush us in half a second. Yeah, Rourke said, his voice low, but she hasn't. The airlock warning chimed. The boarding corridor on Deck 3 had been extended, pressurized, and matched the human-compatible atmosphere. That was deliberate. She's inviting herself in, vague a murmur from comms, and she's not even hiding it. Stand by, Rourke ordered. Security detail. Full armor. Non-lethal unless I say otherwise. The corridor lights dimmed as the inner hatch cycled open. Mist rolled in, carrying a scent none of them recognized. Something sharp and metallic, undercut by a note like crushed flowers. Shadows shifted in the haze, and then she stepped through. Veyrana of Kalyth. She was tall, taller than any human in the room, with skin like polished mercury that caught and refracted the light in subtle, fluid patterns. Her robes were woven from a material that seemed to pour from her shoulders and pool at her feet, shimmering like molten metal in slow motion. Her eyes were a deep, liquid gold, and when they fell on Rourke, it was like standing beneath the gaze of something ancient and unmovable. The human guards tensed, fingers brushing triggers. Veyrana smiled, not a human smile, but a slow curling of lips that hinted at an entirely different set of instincts. Humans, she said, her voice now in the open air, not in their minds. You have a shape I remember from long ago. You have what my people cannot make for ourselves. Rourke stepped forward, chin lifted. You're going to need to be more specific. Veyrana tilted her head, studying the way a biologist might study a rare specimen. My species, the Kalyth, are enduring. We do not wither as you do, but endurance has a cost. Our bloodline has thinned. We require new life, life your bodies can give. Mara's jaw tightened. You're talking about breeding us. Breeding, Veyrana repeated, tasting the word as if it were crude but not inaccurate. A joining of blood and memory. We would take your strength into our own, and in return, your people would be bound to the royal line of Kalyth. Your descendants would live among the stars for millennia. Sound a lot like ownership, Rourke said flatly. Her golden eyes met his. Not ownership, kinship. You would be mine, yes, but I would be yours as well. No harm would come to you while I breathe. There was a murmur among the security team, half fear, half the dangerous allure of what she offered. Mara, though, stepped forward, closing the gap between them until the scent of that strange metallic floral aura was strong enough to sting her nose. And if we refuse, she asked. Veyrana's lips curved again. You will not refuse. Her confidence was not arrogance. It was certainty, as if she'd already seen the decision in their futures. She shifted her gaze to Mara, lingering for a heartbeat longer than necessary, and there was something there, curiosity, challenge, and a flicker of admiration. Without another word, she turned, gesturing toward the still open corridor that led into her ship. The walls of the passage rippled faintly, like the skin of a living thing. Come, Veyrana said. You must see what I offer before you can truly understand what it is you are refusing. The hum of the Haven's reach felt distant now, replaced by the faint, heartbeat-like throb from the Dreadnought beyond. The crew exchanged glances, the unspoken question hanging between them. Step into the lion's den, or risk offending the lioness who held them in her claws. Rourke's eyes met Mara's. No words passed, but the decision was made. "All right," he said finally. "Let's see your ship." And with that, the humans crossed the threshold into the domain of the Matriarch of Kalyth. Chapter 3, Flesh and Fire. The corridors of the Kalyth Dreadnought curved like the inside of a great living shell. The walls were smooth but warm under the fingertips, faintly luminous with veins of pale blue light that pulsed in rhythm with some distant, unseen heartbeat. Every step the humans took left faint ripples in the floor, as though it yielded slightly before firming again, an unnerving reminder that this ship was less machine and more grown. Captain Rourke kept his shoulders square, but his gaze never stopped moving, scanning junctions, noting bulkhead seams, memorizing sightlines. Lieutenant Mara Voss walked just behind him, her eyes drawn to the alien details. The hanging vines that glowed faintly in the air ducts, the way the ship's lighting shifted subtly toward them as they moved. Veyrana led the way without looking back, her molten robes flowing in slow ripples. "Your vessel is serviceable," she said, her voice carrying easily down the corridor, "but fragile. It would not last a month in the rift unescorted." Rourke didn't bite. "We've lasted years without your help. That is why you interest me," Veyrana replied, her tone like a teacher correcting a student. "You persist without the means. You fight without the numbers. Most species that live so close to the edge fall. They emerge into a vast chamber, part throne room, part observation deck. The walls were transparent, revealing a sweep of the rift's distorted stars, but the view was interrupted by a sudden flicker of motion. A swarm of incandescent fragments streaked toward them, a meteor storm, small but fast, drawn in by the rift's gravity wells. Even at this distance, Rourke could see they were moving at impossible velocity. Vega's voice crackled over the humans' comms. "Captain, the Reach is still docked. Impact trajectory in 30 seconds. Before Rourke could order anything, Veyrana raised one slender, metallic hand. The chamber's walls shimmered, then darkened as layers of shielding folded into place with the sound of whispering steel. Beyond them, her Dreadnought's outer hull blazed with sudden light, panels unfurling like petals, revealing a lattice of energy collectors that glowed brighter than any fusion torch Rourke had ever seen. The meteor struck. Instead of shattering the hull, each impact burst into a corona of emerald flame, dissipated instantly by an invisible barrier. The energy was drawn inward, funneled along the ship's veins of silver light, until it vanished deep into the core. Mara's eyes widened. "You're feeding off the impacts?" Veyrana turned her golden gaze to her. "Nothing wasted. Everything given becomes strength. That is the way of the Kalyth." Rourke stepped closer to the transparent wall, watching the last fragment dissolve into harmless sparks. "Impressive," he admitted. "But we've survived storms without shields like that. You don't need to play protector to make your point." "Oh, Captain," Veyrana said softly, "this is not protection. This is demonstration." At her gesture, the floor beneath them shifted, and a dozen insect-like drones rose silently from recesses in the deck. They glided toward the humans, scanning beams washing over them in quick, clinical sweeps. One paused in front of Mara, tilting its head-like sensor as if curious. "Stop scanning my people," Rourke said sharply. Veyrana didn't flinch. "I am not harming them. I am learning them. Your bodies are resilient in ways that defy proportion. Muscles that repair in days, lungs that adapt to air we could not breathe, hearts that endure sudden loss and still beat on. This is what my people have lost." The drone moved closer to Mara, and she took a step forward, squaring herself against the machine. "We're not livestock," she said. "You don't get to catalog us like animals in a pen." Veyrana studied her for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, she smiled, slow, dangerous, approving. "No," the matriarch said. "You are not livestock. You are rare, and I intend to keep you rare and mine." For the first time, Rourke felt the weight of her intent. Not just interest, but a claim. A claim backed by a ship that had just swallowed a meteor storm without flinching. And somewhere deep in his gut, he knew this was only her opening move. Chapter 4, The Cage of Silk. The passageway from the observation chamber narrowed into a tunnel of liquid light. The walls shimmered like heat haze, their surfaces rippling faintly as the humans passed through, as if reacting to their presence. Somewhere deep in the ship, a low harmonic hum vibrated in Rourke's chest, steady and measured, almost like the beat of a sleeping giant's heart. "Feels alive," Mara muttered under her breath, her fingertips brushing the wall. The surface was warm, almost yielding, like the skin of some massive animal. "Maybe it is," Rourke replied. Ahead of them, Veyrana glided without sound, her robes trailing like molten silver across the shifting floor. She did not look back. She didn't need to. Her presence was a constant, like gravity. The tunnel opened into a hall so vast that Rourke's eyes struggled to measure it. The ceiling arched high above, strung with strands of bioluminescent vines that glowed in every shade of blue and green. The air was thick with a scent like rain on hot stone, undercut with a faint metallic tang. Humans weren't the only ones here. Dozens of Kalyths stood along the hall's perimeter. Some were robed like Veyrana, their eyes gleaming gold. Others wore armor that looked grown rather than forged, their movements fluid, inhumanly precise. The guard's gaze swept over the human visitors like a measuring scan, assessing height, muscle density, breathing rate, without a single word. A line of Kalyth attendants approached, each carrying trays of crystal vessels. Inside them, the liquid shimmered like captured starlight. One of the attendants, her silver skin patterned with whorls of pale lavender, offered a vessel to Mara. The Kalyth guards parted, revealing an enormous set of doors grown from living crystal, their surface swirling with faint, ghost-like images, faces, landscapes, battles. Veyrana gestured, and the doors opened silently. Inside was a chamber that took Mara's breath away. Gardens stretched in every direction, suspended in the air without soil, roots twisting through shimmering spheres of water. Alien flowers with translucent petals opened as they passed, releasing clouds of phosphorescent pollen. Strange avian creatures with elongated wings drifted overhead, their calls echoing like chimes. "It's beautiful," Vega whispered over comms from the escort team. Rourke wasn't smiling. "It's also a prison with no bars." Veyrana inclined her head slightly, as if she'd heard him. "You are safe here. Safe from the rift storms, from the TZYNN, from every danger that hunts your kind. The walls you call a prison. I call them protection. And if we choose to leave?" Rourke asked. Veyrana's expression didn't change. "Why would you?" That was when Mara saw it, just for a second, in the reflection of a water sphere. Two Kalyth guards blocking the entrance they had come through. Their faces were impassive, but their stance was unmistakable. The gardens might have been alive with light and beauty, but the humans knew the truth now. They were guests only for as long as Veyrana willed it. And the Matriarch of Kalyth was not a host who liked to be refused. Chapter 5, Blood, Oath, and the Void. The gardens faded behind them as Rourke and his escort were led back toward the observation deck. The hum of the Dreadnought had deepened, resonating in his ribs like distant thunder. Mara kept glancing over her shoulder. Ever since she'd spotted those guards sealing the way out, she hadn't trusted a single open path in this ship. When they stepped into the observation chamber, the starlit rift beyond was fractured by sudden bursts of motion. A cluster of shapes emerged from the haze, sleek, angular silhouettes cutting across the void like blades. Their hulls were studded with spines that glowed with unstable energy. "TZYNN," Mara breathed. The Kalyth officers in the chamber stiffened, their composure cracking for the first time. The alien attendants whispered urgently in the sibilant language, their golden eyes flicking toward Veyrana. Veyrana herself had gone still, her molten silver robes pooling at her feet. For a heartbeat, her massive calm remained unbroken, and then she hissed, a low, dangerous sound that made even her own guards flinch. "They have come too deep," she said. "They mean to take what is mine." On the central display, the enemy fleet shifted formation. Webs of faint blue light spread between their lead ships, gravity nets, designed to trap and shear massive vessels between unstable suns. The Kalyth Dreadnought, for all its grandeur, would be immobilized in minutes. Rourke stepped forward. "You're boxed in. Your main drives are too large to maneuver through that formation before they close the net." Veyrana's eyes flashed. "Do not tell me what my ship can do, human." "I'm not," Rourke said evenly. "I'm telling you what we can do." Mara caught his glance and understood instantly. "Boarding teams," she said. "Humans can crawl through places your soldiers can't fit. Hit systems they can't reach without ripping their own ship apart." One of the Kalyth commanders snapped something sharp in their own language, clearly dismissive. Veyrana silenced him with a single raised hand. Her gaze settled on Rourke. "You offered to risk your lives for me?" Rourke's jaw tightened. "For everyone on board, including our people still docked to you. But you're going to have to trust us." For a long moment, silence pressed against the chamber like deep water. Then Veyrana stepped down from her dais, closing the space between them. She looked Rourke in the eye, not as a captive studying prey, but as a leader measuring another. "So be it," she said. "You will take a team. You will cut the net. If you fail, there will be nothing left of you to bury." Minutes later, Rourke, Mara, and a half-dozen human crew were in Kalyth combat suits. Sleek but uncomfortably tight, their silver surfaces alive with faint pulses of light. The docking umbilical hissed as it detached, and their small boarding craft shot toward the nearest TZYNN vessel. The enemy ship loomed ahead, its hull a patchwork of jagged armor plates. In the rift's pale light, it looked more like a predator's skull than a machine. They came in low, using the ship's own emissions to mask their approach. "0G and 5, Mara said, gripping the mag clamps on her rifle. The artificial gravity dropped away, leaving them floating, every movement exaggerated. Through her visor, she could see the faint frost forming inside the hull breach they were about to cut. The torch flared and they slipped inside. The TZYNN corridors were cramped, oppressive, and stank of ozone and scorched metal. Shadows twisted under the flicker of emergency lights. They moved fast, boots magnetized the deck, Rourke's voice steadying their comms. "Engineering junction ahead. Cut their net projectors and get out." It was harder than it sounded. TZYNN patrols came to them in tight formations, their chitinous armor reflecting the humans' weapons fire. But humans adapted fast, switching to ricochet angles, using bulkheads for cover, even slamming mag clamp tools into vulnerable joint plates when ammo ran low. By the time they reached the junction, the battle outside had turned into a slow dance of giants. The Kalyth Dreadnought maneuvering with impossible grace, the TZYNN ships tightening the net like predators circling a wounded beast. Mara planted the charges. On my mark, they blew the net's control array in a flash of blue-white light, and the TZYNN ship buckled as the feedback ripped through its systems. Outside, the web of blue light shattered. In the observation chamber of the Dreadnought, Veyrana watched the feeds. When the gravity nets dissolved, her eyes widened, not just in relief, but in something else. Respect. The Kalyth flagship's drives roared to life, ripping free of the trap with a flare of silver light. The TZYNN fleet, suddenly outmatched, scattered into the rift shadows. When Rourke's team returned, bruised and burned alive, Veyrana descended from her throne to meet them. She stopped before Rourke, her golden gaze fixed on his. "You fight," she said slowly, "not for victory, not for conquest. You fight for each other, That is why you win." Her voice lowered, almost reverent. "Perhaps I have underestimated what it means to make you mine." Chapter 6. Hearts and Havoc. The med bay of the Kalyth Dreadnought was unlike any place Mara had ever seen. It didn't hum with the mechanical precision of human facilities. Instead, it breathed. Walls curved seamlessly into the floor, which glowed faintly underfoot. Bioluminescent vines hung from the ceiling, their tendrils pulsing with light in slow rhythm, as if the ship itself were taking her pulse. Pools of thick, silver-blue liquid floated in midair, held by invisible force fields, drifting lazily until guided by unseen hands toward patience. Mara lay on one of the med slabs, her Kalyth combat suit peeled back to the waist. A burn wound stretched across her side, ugly and raw, courtesy of a plasma bolt from the TZYNN boarding team. The air was heavy with the scent of ionized metal and something sweeter, like sap. It wasn't a medic. Veyrana knelt at her side, molten silver robes pooling like spilled quicksilver on the floor. In her hand, she cradled a small, living organism, something halfway between a flower and a sea creature, its petals translucent and tipped with faint gold. "You should be resting," Mara muttered. The matriarch's lips curved faintly. "I should be commanding my fleet. Yet here I am." The creature in her hands unfurled, releasing a tendril tipped with droplets of glowing fluid. Veyrana guided it toward Mara's wound. The liquid sizzled against her skin, but instead of pain, there was an almost electric sensation, a warmth that spread through her muscles down to the bone. "You fought for me," Veyrana said quietly. "For my ship, for my people. I fought to keep everyone alive," Mara replied. Veyrana's golden eyes met hers. "And yet, when the bolt came for me, you stepped in its path." Mara looked away, staring at the glowing pool suspended over her head. Instinct. "No," Veyrana said, her voice like velvet steel. "It was choice." The wound was sealing now, the angry red fading into smooth, pale skin. Veyrana's hands, warm despite their metallic sheen, lingered a moment longer than needed. Mara could feel the matriarch's focus, sharp and unwavering, as though she were mapping more than flesh. "This is what your kind has at mind does not," Veyrana said softly. "You risk yourselves without calculation. You stand where we would not. Even now you speak as if what you did was nothing, yet it is everything." Mara let out a breath. "And what does that make me in her eyes? A soldier? A resource?" Veyrana tilted her head, considering. "In Kalyth terms, soul daughter. One I would defend as fiercely as my own blood." The words carried weight. Mara didn't know the full depth of Kalyth culture, but something in the matriarch's tone told her this wasn't a casual title. The moment was interrupted by the ship's low thrumming shifting into a sharper, faster rhythm. Battle stations again. A Kalyth officer appeared at the doorway, bowing sharply. "Matriarch!" The TZYNN regroup. 3 cruisers on intercept. Veyrana rose in a single, fluid motion. "Prepare my ships." She looked down at Mara. "You will fight again." "Wasn't planning to sit this one out," Mara said, pulling the combat suit back over her healed side. As Veyrana turned to leave, she paused. Her gaze lingered just long enough to make the air feel heavier. "When this is over, human, we will speak of what it means to belong." And then she was gone, molten robes vanishing into the bioluminescent glow of the corridor, leaving Mara with the faint echo of her voice and the strange, unsettling knowledge that the Matriarch of Kalyth now considered her more than just a guest, more than just a soldier. Chapter 7. The Mother and the Captain. The battle was over. The TZYNN cruisers had limped away into the rift, their hulls smoking from the Kalyth Dreadnought's barrage and the humans' precision strikes. The void outside the viewport was calm again, too calm, in Rourke's opinion. On the Kalyth flagship's command hall, the air smelled faintly of scorched ozone and the metallic tang of coolant leaks. Holographic tactical maps hovered in the space between the raised dais and the lower control pits, ghostly blue light flickering against the vaulted, organic walls. Kalyth officers worked in silence, their golden eyes flicking between alien glyphs, none daring to speak too loudly in the Matriarch's presence. Rourke stood at the foot of the dais, hands clasped behind his back. His posture was rigid, but his mind was still replaying the chaos. Mara disappearing into smoke-filled corridors, the feel of the boarding harness digging into his shoulders, the moment the TZY neck collapsed under their assault. Veyrana descended the steps toward him. Her robes, molten silver, rippled as though in an unseen current. Her gaze was steady, unreadable, but there was something different in it now. Less predator, more equal. "You kept your promise," she said, stopping just close enough for her presence to press against the space. "You freed my ship. You saved my people." "I kept my crew alive," Rourke corrected, his voice low. "And in doing so, you kept mine alive as well," she countered. "We owe you more than debt. We owe you place." Rourke's brow furrowed. "Place." Veyrana's golden eyes glinted. "Full integration of your people into the Kalyth royal bloodline. Humans as captains, governors, warriors under my banners. You will have equal voice in the councils, equal rights in our fleets. The strength of your stubbornness bound to the endurance of my kind." "That sounds like sovereignty traded for survival," Rourke said flatly. "It is survival traded for dominance." Veyrana replied, "The TZYNN will not stop. Others will come. Alone, you will be hunted to extinction. Together, we will burn so brightly the dark will recoil." Around them, the hum of the Dreadnought systems deepened, as though the ship itself was listening. The Kalyth officers in the pits worked more slowly, their ears tilted toward the conversation. Mara entered from the side hatch, a faint pink scar peeking from under her collar, the only sign of her recent wound. She moved to stand beside Rourke, her gaze flicking between him and Veyrana. "She's not wrong," Mara said quietly. "We can't match the TZYNN fleet for fleet. But if we had their tech, their infrastructure," she trailed off, meeting Rourke's eyes, "we wouldn't just survive. We'd reshape the map." "That's the cost," Rourke said, glancing at her. "Once you take a deal like this, you don't get to walk away without blood." Veyrana stepped closer, so close Rourke could see the faint ripples of light across her silver skin. Then she did something no Kalyth had done in living memory. She bent one knee before him. Gasps echoed from the Kalyth officers. Even Mara's breath caught. "I kneel to no one," Veyrana said, her voice carrying through the chamber. "But I kneel to the truth. You are not prey. You are not resource. You are kin I would claim and protect as my own." Her head remained bowed, but her eyes locked with it from beneath the silver curtain of her hair. Rourke didn't move for several heartbeats. The tension was thick enough to taste, the air heavy with alien incense and the sharp tang of coolant. His instincts screamed caution, but something in the weight of her gesture told him this wasn't a trap. It was a promise. Finally, he spoke. "If we do this, it's not as your subjects. It's as equals." Veyrana's lips curved faintly. "Agreed. Equals." The word settled between them like the final stroke of a blade. The Kalyth officers began to murmur, already calculating what this unprecedented pact meant. Mara looked between them, the corner of her mouth lifting. "Guess that makes you family now, Captain." Rourke exhaled slowly. "God help them." And somewhere deep in the ship, the hum shifted again, no longer the slow pulse of a sleeping giant, but the rising heartbeat of something waking, something ready to fight with two bloodlines instead of one. Chapter 8, Blood and Stars. The joining hall of the Kalyth Dreadnought had no walls, at least not in the human sense. Instead, great arcs of crystalline structure rose into the void, open to the stars yet sealed by an invisible field that held in the atmosphere. The galaxy lay stretched beyond them in impossible detail, nebulae blooming like flowers of fire, the rift's pale shimmer curling in the distance, and the twin suns of a nearby system casting molten light across the ceremonial space. The floor was a mosaic of living metal, shifting subtly underfoot in patterns that echoed the pulse of the Dreadnought itself. Between those pulses, faint motes of light floated up into the air, like sparks rising from an unseen forge. Captain Elias Rourke stood at the center of the hall, his dark uniform freshly pressed, his posture unyielding despite the weight of the occasion. On his left, Lieutenant Mara Voss wore a formal variant of her combat armor, the burnished plates reflecting the twin suns. She looked ready for war even here, in a place meant for peace. On his right stood Veyrana, Matriarch of Kalyth. Her molten silver robes had been replaced by ceremonial armor, sleek, organic, etched with flowing patterns of gold that shimmered with every breath. Her golden eyes glowed faintly, like a star seen through a thin veil. Around them, concentric rings of Kalyth nobles, warriors, and shipmasters watched in solemn silence. At the outer ring stood the human delegation from Haven's Reach, their expressions a mix of pride, uncertainty, and awe. A Kalyth elder, his silver skin marked with intricate, time-worn etchings, stepped forward, carrying a narrow crystalline blade that pulsed with its own heartbeat. Veyrana spoke first, her voice carrying across the hall without effort. "By blood and by oath, I bind the fate of the Kalyth to that of humankind. Your stubborn hearts will beat within our fleets. Your fire will temper our endurance. You will walk our worlds as kin." She turned to Rourke. "And in return you will stand with us, not as vassals, but as equals. You will guard our lineage as we guard yours. We will burn together in the dark, so that the dark may fear us." The elder handed her the blade. She drew it across her palm without flinching, silver blood welling up in luminous drops that floated upward into the air, caught in the hall's slow gravity drift. Rourke took the blade next. The metal was warm, almost alive. He sliced his own palm, red mingling with silver as their blood droplets touched and merged midair, the fusion igniting into a small, shimmering star. A murmur rippled through the Kalyth. No human blood had ever touched theirs in this hall. Not in war, not in treaty, not in history. Mara watched the tiny merged star drift upward, her jaw tight with something caught between pride and defiance. She glanced sideways at Rourke. "Looks like we just rewrote their history books." "Let's hope we didn't just sign our own," he murmured back. The elder raised his arms, and the hall's crystalline arcs pulsed with light. Above them, the merged star expanded into a projection of two emblems, the Kalyth crest, and beneath it a new sigil, a stylized human starship surrounded by the same golden arc as the matriarch's own house mark. Veyrana reached out and clasped Rourke's wrist, her grip firm, her eyes never leaving his. "From this moment, the stars will not remember us apart." In the crowd, human and Kalyth voices rose together. Not in perfect unison, not yet, but enough to fill the adjoining hall with something that felt like the first heartbeat of an entirely new future. As the ceremony ended, Rourke turned toward the open void beyond the arcs. The rift shimmered in the distance, vast and dangerous as ever. But for the first time, he didn't see it as a threat waiting to consume them. He saw a horizon. The Haven's Reach cruised in silent formation beside the Kalyth Dreadnought, their hulls gleaming under the pale light of a nearby gas giant. The hum of the engines was steady, a low vibration that spoke of hard-won peace. Beyond the viewport, alien constellations glimmered, a sky neither wholly human nor wholly Kalyth, but now claimed by both. On the forward observation deck, Captain Elias Rourke stood with Lieutenant Mara Voss at his side. Below them, the neon sprawl of the Kalyth capital city pulsed with color, spiraling towers alive with silver light, alien voices carrying on the warm breeze through the open docking bay. "It's strange," Mara said softly. "A year ago, they were strangers who saw us as resources. Now they call us kin." Rourke glanced at her, the ghost of a smile in his eyes. "That's the thing about humans. We don't stay what we're told we are." Behind them, Veyrana approached in ceremonial robes, her golden eyes reflecting the same horizon. She placed a hand over her heart and bowed. something no Kalyth ruler had ever done for another species. "You have given my people more than survival," she said. "You have given us fire." Rourke's gaze swept the stars. "Then let's make sure it never goes out." As the ships broke orbit together, human and Kalyth banners rippling side by side on the comm feeds, Mara leaned closer and murmured, "This is only the beginning." And out there, in the dark between worlds, the merged heartbeat of two civilizations carried on, steady, defiant, unafraid.